The next topic in our course is attention, which of course you've been paying in this course so far. Attention is important and interesting because it's sort of the next step after perception. We get all the perceptual input in. Then we got to somehow figure out what we need to attend to, what we want to attend to, and attention becomes kind of a prerequisite for any further cognitive processing. Things like memory, accessing your memory and stuff like that. You have to have attention working well in order to do all of those additional cognitive processes successfully. So attention is a very important topic in that sense. It's kind of almost like a gatekeeper that we have to have some sort of way to figure out what to attend to and also what not to attend to. And both of those are very complex processes actually. Now, what's interesting about attention is that if I ask you, well, what is attention? It feels like everybody kind of knows what attention is. You can easily come up with some sort of intuitive definition, right? And actually, William James, even in 1890, wrote the exact same thing and stated everyone knows what attention is. Yet, as you could imagine, in most fields of psychology, this is the case after all, if you ask people to come up with a theoretical definition, there's actually a very long history of debate about what actually attention is. So, for the purposes of our course here, you can think of it as the study of the capabilities and limitations to select and process sensory information from the environment. So in other words, the sensory information coming in, we talked about that in our section on perception. Now, attention is sort of our ability to handle all that sensory information coming in, and in which ways we are capable of dealing with that and using it to adjust our behaviors, and in which ways we're falling short. Another way of thinking of attention, of course, is in a more colloquial way as concentration on our mental activity. But for the purposes of the course, it's really more about how we're using our attentional system to deal with all the sensory information that's coming in from the environment. Now, attention is a massive topic in society these days as well. So of course we have situations where people try to multitask. So multitasking is one avenue where attention is very important, because the question there is, how can we attend? What kinds of things can we do well together? How can we distribute our attention between multiple tasks? But of course, attention also has been at the forefront of a debate when we think about ADHD and its prevalence. ADHD these days is highly overdiagnosed, but at the same time it's also clear that there are plenty of kids who have trouble with regulating their attentional capabilities, and it gets them in trouble in school, it gets them in trouble in just executing everyday tasks, finishing tasks, focusing, and so forth. And in that regard, of course, at least for a while, there was a very strong inclination to prescribe things like Ritalin to kids. As a parent, I can tell you that's very difficult to make that decision if you have to make that decision, because putting any sort of pill in your child is not great. At the same time, when is that warranted? When is it not warranted? How can we use these kinds of pharmaceutical treatments to better attentional capabilities and so forth? To give you just a quick idea about an alternative for that, and I'll post a video about this. Ritalin is not the be-all end-all, right? Especially nowadays, there's actually also different kinds of games and actually EEG methodologies that are used where essentially kids play a game while their EEG is recorded, and they, for example, control an airplane on a particular computer screen. And by training how to regulate particular brainwaves, they actually then are better able to focus in on these brainwaves that are conducive to being in an attentive state. So that's very useful as an approach, and it's actually shown a lot of promise in terms of translating also to situations outside of the classroom. So that's more about how we deal with disruptions in the ability to pay attention. Now, this being said, of course, it's fascinating and actually astonishing how well people are able to filter out some information from the background and attend to specific aspects of the world if they so decide to do so. So for example, here if you want to read the message here printed in bold, right? Read the message in this type starting with the words among. So among the most spectacular cognitive abilities is the ability to select one message from another. We do this by focusing our attention on certain cues, such as type style. When we focus our attention on certain stimuli, the message in other stimuli is not clearly identified. However, some information from the unattended source may be detected. Now you saw in that case a couple of times I actually slipped up and did get distracted. But it's impressive in general, and hopefully you guys did a better job than I do at reading that. We can filter out a whole lot of information if we're sort of setting our attentional system to focus on one particular thing and not other things. Now, let me start by an example of how attention may be directed and may be focused by an example of what's called change blindness. And I'm going to post the next video that's a YouTube clip of an experiment that has been done on what is called change blindness. And we'll talk about what exactly that is after you guys watch that video.